everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Conversation Station. This episode, we're going to be reviewing American Gangster, a Ridley Scott movie from 2007 starring Denzel Washington and Russell Crowe. Obviously, two huge names to head the movie, but this movie is just littered with an awesome cast, and it just seems like there was so many people in it. The fact that this movie didn't cost an arm and a leg for the studio is really crazy. And honestly, if they tried to do a follow up now with the same kind of cast, I feel like a lot of those people's paycheck numbers would be a lot higher, just because they've obviously grown a lot since the 2007 movie. So yeah, first thing I'm going to talk about is the cast. Now the cast was, as I said, just stacked. So many people, so many faces, and this is one of the very few movies that as a kid I got to actually go see in theaters. I didn't get to see too many movies in theaters as a kid just because nobody really wanted to take me, and obviously I couldn't take myself as a kid. We lived pretty far away from the movie theater in our area, so I just didn't really get to go up until I was a teenager. So as a younger kid, I just didn't really get to head out to movies too often, and this was one of the few that my dad had actually just randomly was like, hey, you want to go with me and your cousin to go see a movie? Didn't know what movie it was. I was just excited to go. Looking back on it now, it probably was not a super appropriate movie for me to be going to see, but honestly, I'm just glad to have seen it in theaters at the time that I did, because it was really cool. And I remember the entire movie, the entire theater experience of being there, just because I enjoyed that movie so much. And honestly, I've always had a love for history and just retelling of things, even if it's dramatized or told in a bit fantasy style way. I just love to see the references and things like that, and this movie had all of that. One thing that, even being a young kid, that I was really fascinated by was just the cinematography, how it really showed how New York was back in those times, the 1970s, and it's just absolutely insane how well they captured those scenes. And 1970s New York, just it really did look very, very well, and the cars, to the clothes, to the way they walked and talked, it was just awesome. And it really does a great job to put you there. If this is one of those movies that you haven't seen, truly take yourself out of everything, turn your phone on silent, sit down and watch this movie. I guarantee you if history and good movies are your thing, I just can't imagine you'd not enjoy this movie. So yeah, the cast: Denzel Washington as Frank Lucas, a prominent drug kingpin in Harlem in the 1970s. He came up under Bumpy Johnson, and they show a little bit of him in the beginning. Denzel Washington's character, is the same way, comes up under Bumpy. Bumpy has a heart attack in the beginning, leading to Frank kind of having to fill the shoes. Frank was kind of like the driver, right-hand man, so it's not that it's a different, we see Frank perform obviously something, an execution for Bumpy in the beginning, just to get it right out in the open, to say, hey, this is going to be that type of movie, and they open with that. And I think that's obviously a good way to decide who's going to want to, or what kind of movie you're subscribing to, what kind of movie you're going to be signed on for. And yeah, it was just, and it's a really crazy scene, but it definitely left the the whole theater kind of quiet and stunned, because it's that really does set the tone for the movie for the rest of the time. You have Russell Crowe, and he does Richie Roberts, and he does a fantastic job of paralleling Denzel Washington's the rich Frank Lucas versus Richie Roberts, who is definitely a scumbag in his own right. I mean, he's cheated on his wife. He's probably a gambler. All the regular everyday average Joe degenerate stuff. But still a degenerate, still a bad guy. There's a scene where he's in court with his wife, and he thinks Richie Roberts had a reputation with his precinct because he busted a mobster with almost $1 million in his car, and he turned in every penny. Now, obviously, in a police department or a place where people aren't making enough money, you don't do that. And that would elicit a lot of untrust amongst people who do. And so that's exactly what it did. It made him a pariah. People didn't want to work with him. They thought he was a Boy Scout. And he had to, take on this bravado of I don't care. I'm going to do the right thing, even if it, everybody talks crap about me. But there's a scene where essentially his wife tells him, you think you're good because, you do the right thing, but you're still a scumbag, and you're still going to the same hell as, all the guys that you lock up and think you're so better as. We have John Ortiz as Javier Riviera, which is Richie Roberts' partner, who gets into some terrible trouble. Idris Elba as Tango. The whole Lucas family was just a star-studded cast, and that was, really cool. We had Cuba Gooding Jr. play Nicky Barnes, which was the opposite, like Frank Lucas's rival at the time. He kind of stole his product and sold it as a different name, and obviously that leads to confrontation in the movie, and one of the best scenes just, of the confrontation. Cuba Gooding Jr. does a really great job in his, portrayal of Nicky, and it was just a really cool scene. It was definitely something different that I, because I grew up watching him on Snow Dogs, so to see him in this, it was definitely different, and it was really cool. I think he played that very well. The same with Idris Elba. That scene with him and Denzel, obviously, I think you know the one I'm talking about, the one in the diner. It's insane. I mean, if they're not still studying that in film schools and stuff like that, that scene was wild. Just like I said, it was straight to the point. In that scene, Frank was trying to make a statement, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but Idris Elba in that scene definitely solidified his character as Tango, and it was just fantastic. That whole, even just the fact that it's, so small, just such a small, like, instance of, him, charging him the tax, and then, Denzel coming back for, what he's owed, essentially. Ruby Dee played Mama Lucas. Chiwetel Ejiofor plays Huey Lucas, and T.I. plays Stevie Lucas. We also had Common playing Turner Lucas, which was the brother of Frank Lucas, if I'm not mistaken. We had RZA as Moses Jones, which was one of the undercover detectives that ends up helping Richie Roberts bring down Frank Lucas. So yeah, just like huge, like so many names. Norman Reedus has like a small role as a detective in a morgue. And Josh Brolin plays Detective Tupo, and which is just a dirty cop who's going after Frank, who's not Richie, who's clearly, on the take and wants, things from Frank. And the pacing of this movie is absolutely fantastic. I genuinely don't think there's a part in this movie where you'll start to feel where you just kind of are out of it, or like I said, the pacing is just off. They keep a very good job of explaining how, why, where. Frank does, a great job of trying to keep his stuff hidden. He goes through, military men and tries to hide it in the coffins and things like that. But unfortunately, with a, Boy Scout like Richie, he's just going to continue to search. And even though he's getting, kind of crapped on from his superiors and, shit always rolls downward, it doesn't really matter. He just kind of continues to go forward. And, Frank Lucas keeps his, confidence, and throughout the whole movie, he obviously knows people are coming after him, so it's definitely interesting to see, how he starts to worry about it, and you see how, obviously, race plays a big part of it. He starts to get problems from the Italian mafia and things like that, and just different people, and he just doesn't seem to understand why, and he, goes to his friends and tries to figure it out, and just, one of the really awesome scenes is after, they make an attempt on him and his wife. And, of course, that amazing Denzel scene, where he's saying, like, they tried to kill my wife. You can't redo that scene. If you've ever I've watched a few interviews with Frank Lucas, and I believe Denzel, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm almost positive Denzel Washington spent a good amount of time with Frank Lucas before filming this movie. Because the mannerisms were on point. If you watch like a Frank Lucas interview, the way he talks and acts, Denzel Washington did a great job at doing a Hollywood version of that. And like I said, just the portrayal in itself. This was a scary figure, and Denzel did a great job at making him so. But there's also wholesome scenes too. This is where I go into that duality. Frank Lucas was a monster, by the police standards, and they do that well to show, there's a scene where it shows the effects of the drug use, and there's like a scene, where it just shows all the different people who've OD'd and had all these problems. Like there's a scene with a baby being taken out of a room while the mom is like, overdosed on the bed and stuff. Just showing the really harsh reality of addiction, it happens. It's awful. But it's just a quick little montage to show you, how bad it really is. Even Richie Roberts' partner ends up, overdosing on the blue magic just because it's that much of a hook. Drug use does not discriminate. It will take anybody and everybody, whoever's willing to use it. And that this movie is a very, good way to scare you from using drugs, honestly. At least hard drugs like that, because that's insane. But yeah, there's a extremely touching scene, where Frank's able to buy his mom a house, and he's able to call out his entire family from North Carolina and say, hey, everybody come out here, you know, basically like, almost like winning the lottery, you know, like we won, you know, I got us a house, I got us somewhere to live, you know, you guys got to come out here. And that scene, you know, that scene is fantastic. You know, just that her like, you know, the mama walking up and, you know, asking, whose house is this? Like, that's your house, you know. Is it my house? And I love that scene. I don't know why. Like, it always gives me goosebumps. Just because, you know, that's the thing as a kid you hope to do for your family, you know. You hope you're able to give them a huge house and, you know, have everybody live together. And at the end of that, or like in the middle of that scene, you know, his mom says how she's just so thankful to have all her family together at the table. And like, that's what Frank was trying to do, you know. And as much as, of course, the drug dealing, the murders and stuff like that, awful, terrible lifestyle, you know, it's the duality of it all. You know, it's the reason you do it. I don't know. It's just interesting. It's an interesting perspective, you know. But it also has the duality of showing Frank cutting up the turkey, serving up his Thanksgiving dinner, and then it cuts to Richie Roberts making himself like a turkey and potato chip sandwich, and he's like crushing the potato chips and like just living in his rundown apartment. And it shows the guy doing the right thing, you know, is, you know, eating potato chips and doesn't have his kid and has kind of a not so great apartment, versus, you know, Frank Lucas, who's doing the not good thing. And he's got beautiful house, his family's all together, everybody's there, you know. And just that to me, those scenes were really, really important in the movie, and I think they were just really cool. You know, it's just insane to see. Another really sentimental and really cool moment in that movie was when Denzel Washington shows his mom a vanity or a cabinet that she used to have. It's like and basically she said that there were no pictures of it, like she lost it in a fire of some sort, and that like they couldn't get it back. You know, it was something that you just couldn't get it back, couldn't get it made again, you know. And Frank had it made from memory. He remembered what his mom had, and so from memory he had it with money, you know, had it commissioned and had it made. And, you know, just, you know, everybody had a lump in their throat, I feel like, you know. It was really cool. It's just one of those scenes that it just speaks for itself. Incredible. You know, their ability to do what they did in that movie was crazy. You know, they filmed on location from New York as well as Thailand. And development for the movie started in 2000 initially because of the film's rising budget. Universal canceled the production in 2004. And it later was revived in 2005 with Ridley Scott at the helm. And principal photography commenced over a period of 5 months from July to December of 2006. And filming took place throughout New York City and concluded in Thailand. So they did film on location, you know, and that's obvious with the movie. The cinematography is A+. The acting, A+. Like, I genuinely can't find a gripe about this movie. There's no way you can put it on in a day and I can't get hooked and sit down and watch it. It's just one of those movies that I can't help it. I love the references to reality. I love the fact that it's so, you know, Hollywood, and, you know, you never really know what's true or what's fake. It might all, you know, be true. I don't know. It's just a really fantastic film that, you know, leaves you definitely wanting more, but being satisfied with everything that they gave you. There's no superheroes, there's no lasers, there's no lights in this movie. There's, as far as I know, no CGI. And it's just one of those movies you just have to sit down and watch. If you've had the chance to not watch it yet, like I said, and you haven't seen too many clips, just truly give it a chance from beginning to end, because I promise you, you will not be disappointed. It's something, you know, different. It was nominated for 21 awards, including 2 Oscar nominations for Best Art Direction and Best Supporting Actress for Ruby Dee. So just, you know, that right there should tell you. Really appreciate any time you spent watching my video. I really hope to see you again. Thank you.